Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with the Emmy-nominated cinematography team from National Geographic's Life Below Zero. Here today are Best Cinematography for a Reality Program nominees: Charlie Beck, Director of Photography; Michael Cheeseman, Director of Photography; Danny Day, Director of Photography; and Pedro Delrey, Camera Operator. Congratulations, everyone. I want to start with you, though, Pedro, because this is the first one for you. How did you hear the news, and then how do you celebrate your first Emmy nomination?
Well, I was actually on a shoot in Massachusetts, and Bunker, the EP of the show, called me and told me. So it was really exciting. Yeah, I don't know as far as celebrating it or whatever, but I've been working on Life Below Zero for a few years, about 3 or 4 years in the franchise, and I just seen people be nominated and win Emmys and the whole thing. And I was like, man, that would be pretty cool if that ever happened one day. And it was really nice when it did. So
Well, we're all here to celebrate now with you. Michael and Danny, the show won this category in 2016, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's a pretty incredible track record you've got going. What do you think it is about Life Below Zero and your team over there that has captured Emmy attention in this way, specifically for cinematography?
I think for the cinematography, it's really cool how much freedom we're given in the field to be pretty much as creative as we want. And we can try new things. We can stick to what works. We're always trying something different and new. But for me, it just seems like it's the creativity that they give us once we get out there. And things always change, and we're changing things up. And I think that shows in the show, especially with a lot of our specialty. Like, we have all the story and we're capturing everything, but we also fill in a lot of different specialty camera work that just kind of, it gives it a nice look.
Yeah, I think I second that, Danny, is I think for our show, if you watch it season after 12 seasons, you watch that we never get into a certain comfort zone. We're always pushing ourselves to the next level. Nat Geo and BBC is very kind with letting us be free with our creativity. And so, Danny and I and everybody years after years are like, oh my God, that was a great shot. So it's like this little bit of a competition of like doing the best we can and not having that complacency over the years. Each season that we see, we're like, oh my gosh, we can definitely up that game. And so I think it's just the change and upping up, making the cinematography better each year has made this show stand out so much because it's never a standard platform. So if you watch it season after season, you can see that we're getting better and better at our craft. And I think that's a huge a point to why we get nominated all the time.
And Charlie, you're a six-time Emmy nominee for Deadliest Catch. And I can talk about this because it's all the National Geographic family. But you kept losing to these guys. So if you can't beat them, join them. Is that what you were thinking this year? Or, what's that experience been like for you joining this team?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it right there. It's funny too, because this year we were both shows were up for the nomination, but only Life Below Zero got it. So yeah, I guess I did exactly. I jumped ship. But honestly, some of the years when you go to the Emmys, you lose to. I mean, I've never actually won. I've always been nominated, but never won. And losing to Life Below Zero is like, yeah, I get it. Those guys, they always push the boundaries, and sometimes some years we would lose to shows that just it didn't really make sense why they were even nominated, really, and then to lose to someone else, another show you can really respect, it didn't really sting as hard. But I've definitely had to stand up in the aisle and let the guys pass by me every time I've gone. So
oh. Well, welcome to our side.
Yeah.
And the three of you, Charlie, Michael, and Danny, you share this title of director of photography. So how does that work, sharing the role? And like, are you each designated to follow different people in parts of Alaska, or how does that work behind the scenes?
Well, we have a standard platform of how the show is shot. So like when Charlie, Danny, and I go out, we'll get designated to a certain camp. And then once we're at that camp, we're in control of the style and, the shoot, how it's going to go, the creativity, and so on. But we have a pretty blanket style guide of how we shoot it. But we can take that blanket style guide and we can expand it as far as we want, as long as we're still telling the story the proper way. So once we're in the field, each DP gets to take their shot at trying to be as creative as possible and tell the story in a different way than we did the year before.
And Pedro, how's it been for you out there as a camera operator? Talk about, your function on the field and what it's like following these people.
I mean, we're a really small crew. So, everybody is kind of involved in a lot of the creative process. I mean, mostly. I think that you kind of learn to make a lot with a little, because you have to travel light. You have to be able to kind of change course, at the drop of a hat. And also, not only that, it's like learning how a lot of that equipment functions in those type of conditions. I mean, you could have worked on a million other things and have, years of experience, but understanding how cameras, batteries, monitors behave when it's 30 degrees below zero, there's nothing that really can prepare you for that. I think that, like, having to get out there and do it and like see what, it's really basically it's a lot of logistic juggling in terms of keeping equipment warm and planning your day so that your cast and yourself aren't just sitting around. Like, let's say you have to go do exteriors and then you go to do interiors. Well, you need to wait an hour and a half for the sensor to acclimate because it fogs up. So just little things like that, as far as like planning your day and figuring out what to shoot, when to shoot it. You only have a few hours of light in the wintertime. So that kind of, is a big part of everything in terms of logistics, planning, equipment, and everything else. So
I would love to hear from each of you. Maybe I'll start with Michael. But just the nature of this show. You talk about equipment working in below zero temperatures, but what about you? I'm curious if each of you have maybe like a short story about when you were the most uncomfortable on this series, or when you felt your life was most in danger. We've seen bears charging at people. I mean, this show is wild. So, I mean, think of a moment that was most uncomfortable for you and your personal safety.
I have a few. I think as I get older in the field, I get colder faster, or maybe I'm just not as tough as I used to be. I've gotten frostnip on my face a couple times here and here. I've gotten it on my fingertips multiple times on both hands. So it's extremely uncomfortable. So once that happens, all those points are very sensitive and get cold very quickly. And obviously we need the dexterity to use our cameras. But I've been in a couple situations with Rico, one of our cast members, where we had to go up to a cabin that potentially could have a bear in it. And the first time I ever went to Rico's cabin was the most scared I've ever been, because it was just him and I who went in the cabin. Obviously, he had a gun and he was ready to use it if needed, but I'm right there behind him. So if Rico doesn't, take care of the bear, I'm right there. So that was a pretty nerve-wracking moment. So there's been a few of those over the years. But you just kind of, you roll with the punches, you go with what's going on, you follow the cast members. But that's the one that stands out to me right now.
Danny, what about you?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but definitely the cold. One time in Norvik, it was around -50, and it was extremely cold. Your fingers were hurting really bad. Your fingers are always the weakest link. You can dress up as warm as you want, but you always still need to use your hands to get to all the buttons and dials and whatnot. And then your monitors and batteries kind of start acting up on you. So it kind of gets frustrating because you want to keep shooting. Everything looks great. Everything's awesome. But your gear is starting to act up. So you're trying to warm batteries up or monitors inside your jacket using your own body heat. So definitely anything with the extreme cold. But another one for kind of scary is maybe filming with the hailstones. And Charlie and Pedro know about these stories as well. But in the spring, we'll go out in the ice, and there's ice out in the ocean. We're in these tiny 10 boats, really. And we're floating around out there, and we're finding channels through the ice. But then you have wind making these channels kind of disappear, where you're kind of looking around wondering, are we going to get like stuck out here? Like, is the channel we came in on, is the ice going to come together, and then we're just out there on this floating ice in the ocean? And once again, we're on like these pretty small little boats. Luckily, the hailstones, they've been out there so much that they have great knowledge. But that's one of those stories that I remember being in the boat, being like, man, I'm starting to get a little nervous here.
It's super scary when those moments happen.
Charlie, what about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was the whole time you asked that question, I was thinking of the same one Danny brought up, but I mean, we're in this 18-foot aluminum skiff ripping through the ice, and we're completely at the mercy of like the local knowledge they had. And the entire time I was just like, if we hit one of these icebergs or lose our way or tip this already tippy boat over, we're history. There's nobody that's coming to get us. It doesn't matter like how much safety gear we packed or what. We were truly. And then the other thing is, it wasn't just for one day. We went out there for days and days and days and days. Like it was 4 days. It felt like maybe. And then if you added it up, that was quite a ride. There's another one, coincidentally with the hailstones, but we shot this giant moose, and they left me on the side of the riverbank with the moose, and I was going to get the arrival shot, but they kind of just forgot about me and went to go celebrate shooting the moose, and they were laughing, and they floated downriver and just basically left me there. And right in Alaska, when bears hear gunshots, it's like dinner bells to them. And I was just hanging out with this dead moose, no gun or anybody watching me, and I'm just stressing out the whole time, like, when are you guys gonna come back?
How long were you out there?
I mean, it definitely was like 30 minutes. I'm just sitting there, just me and the moose, and just like making all these noises and still bleeding. I'm just like, I'm trying to come up with a plan, like where I'm gonna go.
There. Well, the episode nominated this year is called Bulletproof, and it's just incredibly shot throughout. But what about this? I'm curious, how do you coordinate like the aerial shots of the mountains and the scenery? And then one of the things that struck me is this guy Jesse. He's like, okay, I'm gonna go on like a 20-mile hike up this mountain. Like, who has to go for the 20-mile hike with him? Like, do you guys have to go to boot camp before you shoot this show? Like, who's trailing this guy for 20 miles in the wild, and how does that work? And anyone can answer that.
Who shot that one?
Yeah, I shot that one with Jesse. Jesse is like a world-renowned kind of like long-distance runner, so basically nobody's going to keep up with him. He basically lets you catch up, and then you can get whatever you need. We had him on walkie a lot, and a lot of the audio for that particular scene, we were just more or less feeding him things to talk about as he ran up the mountain, and then we just chased him with the drone, and then we had some long lens. But yeah, to answer your question, nobody's really in as good a shape as that guy, and we're already pretty slow, all the stuff we have to carry. So he would only slow down to let us catch up.
So you're kind of long lensing it, because I was going to be one of my other questions is I love his dog Neil, who's just like running around him the whole time. And I was going to ask, does Neil ever get distracted and just like jump on the crew or look at the camera? Like, do you have to worry about things like that, or is Neil all good? He's a pro.
Yeah, Neil's his own character. I mean, he's very Jesse oriented. You're just kind of like a background thing that's there. So he's not really too interested in you. So he's on his own mission.
And what has this been like for each of you in terms of the people we watch on the show? People like Jesse, Sue Aikens has become like a huge star. Do you develop relationships with these people as a tight-knit sort of crew and family, or as a cinematography, are you sort of trying to stay quiet? Are you trying to stay out of it? What is the personal relationships like?
I think it's a good balance of professionalism and, Danny and I have worked with these people for 10 years plus, so you obviously become friends with them. Like Sue was just texting me an hour ago just about just nonsense. So like we know each other, we're friends. But you ride that line of working and professionalism and making sure that you're still friendly and things like that. But over the years, you grow a heart and you see these people over and over again, and you just, you learn to deal with them and like them. And it's just you become such a big part of their lives and vice versa. So you kind of become a family. But we do kind of try to keep them at arm's length as much as possible. But for me specifically with Sue, when I work with her a lot, we obviously have become friends over the years. So it's definitely a shorthand we have. And with the other characters too, like Jesse, I've known him for a long time. All the, Rico from the beginning. So it's just over the years we have become friends, but we ride that line of keeping them at arm's length as you should.
And what do you find, I mean, other than like the elements that are obvious, what is the biggest challenge about filming this, and then sort of the day-to-day grind of getting all the shots and then getting it to the editor? What is the biggest challenge for you as a cinematography team?
Sometimes the biggest challenge is we'll go out on these trips. It could be anywhere from 2.5 weeks to up to 2 months, I think is some of the longest trip we've been on. And sometimes you're roughing it out there. You're definitely, sometimes you're camping or it's a pretty bare area that you're in. For me, sometimes you wake up in the morning in your tent and there's frost on your sleeping bag, and you've been doing this for like 2 weeks straight, and you're getting out of your sleeping bag and it's cold, and you're like, man, like this is a weird way to wake up and have to go to work. You're like freezing cold and your day is just starting. And for me, that's a big thing to overcome, is just pretty much being out there with them that whole time. And each morning you wake up to go film, and like you're pretty much camping.
What is the general length of time that you're away from home and out there in those elements? Like, what is a general time length of a shoot for you?
Typically, I'd say it's about 3 weeks,
Okay.
maybe a hair under, a hair more, and that's about average, I'd say.
And has this changed your perspective at all for each of you, like with how you think of the wild, how you think of just life in general, and watching the way these people live? How has it impacted you personally?
For me, I did the boat thing for 10 years and I never got to see like any of Alaska. We're just in the dark, bumping around. But when I got on this show, the coolest thing about the Arctic is it's the last place with no fences, no roads. The villages are very concentrated, so everybody lives next to each other. So once you leave the village, there's not some other guy who lives on the mountain nearby. It's I don't know. So the only place I've ever been like that, where nobody owns anything outside of town. It's community property, and there's something to be said for that.
And Pedro, what about you? Were you a nature enthusiast before any of this, or did this get you out of your comfort zone?
Um, I've always like enjoyed nature and spending time in nature, in the outdoors, and done a lot of different like outdoor hobbies and shooting and stuff. But Alaska was very new to me. I mean, I initially started on Port Protection, which is one of the other shows in the franchise. And I did Southeast Alaska. And at that point, I kind of thought that I, kind of understood Alaska and what Alaska was all about. And then I went to like proper Arctic, like trees don't grow anymore kind of thing, and realized how really like out of my element I was in that regard. It was, yeah, it was something I'd never experienced before. But spending all that time there over the last 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been has been I mean, I've learned so much. It's just kind of opened a whole nother facet of what I know and have experienced in life. And it's been cool. A lot of these guys are like, you know, for like Danny's from Tahoe. We have other guys that work on the show that are from, you know, Wyoming or Maine or cold weather places. My family is originally from Puerto Rico, so it was not like that was you know, not an expected path that I would have taken. They all think I'm crazy, basically. So
Well, each of you have had this incredible career in documentary filmmaking and National Geographic. As cinematographers, just real quick as a final question, did you expect this to be your path? Did you expect to do sort of nature documentary, or is this just sort of where your career took you, like many of us? We just sort of land where we land.
I think for me, we've all done plenty of TV shows, and I got knocked into the original productions world, did Ice Road Truckers and Axemen, was going to do Deadliest Catch, but then I got on Light Below Zero, and it kind of honed in my skills because I love the outdoors so much, and it gave me the freedom to be creative. And from there, I grew this passion to shoot this show for so long, but I kind of fell into it because you just kind of get a call and you just, take your jobs because you need a paycheck. But as the years have gone on, I feel like it has been the exact path that I was supposed to go on for this show specifically, at least in my like journey in my career.
Danny, how about you?
And yeah, for me, before the show, a lot of my filming was kind of outdoor stuff. Um, and this show was it was supposed to be a 3-week job that ended up turning into pretty much a 10-year program now. And like Cheeseman says, as it goes at the beginning, it's just a job. You don't know how far it's going to go down the road. And season after season, you really get a love for this show, at least for me, and I think pretty much all of us, that as each season goes on, you love the show more and more, and it really becomes a part of you. And this last 10 years, I've loved working on the show. I really enjoy it.
Charlie, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I never could have seen this coming. When I was in my early 20s, I worked on fishing boats and then got into photography and then basically got on Deadliest Catch. So that was more linear and that kind of made more sense because I had at least a background on boats. But this has been, just basically a dream. It's been, me and Danny and Pedro have worked together on tons of different shoots, and a lot of the cool thing about the show is the guys you get to go out with and make friends with, and they're your brothers once it's over with. And 3 weeks prior, you hadn't even met the guy, but what you go through is it really solidifies those friendships.
And Pedro, from Puerto Rico, maybe you were thinking of beach outdoors, but you kind of alluded to that. But how has this journey been for you?
I mean, it's been hands down the most rewarding work experience of my life, as far as like the experience, what Cheeseman has talked about, the creative freedom that we have on the show. It's not micromanaged at all. Obviously, you have a certain look that you're trying to go for when you're shooting, and kind of creating the visual aesthetics of the show or whatever. But you have so much freedom to do kind of what you want as far as the shooting goes, and exploring new possibilities, trying not to have anything get formulaic or stagnant to where, I don't know, it's for me, it's been one of the most rewarding professional experiences of my life. Actually, the most rewarding, I would say.
And people love it. I mean, 115 episodes and counting. So congratulations to all of you. It's incredible work that you're doing, and good luck this September at the Emmys.
Thank you.
Thank you.